Okay guys, so extremely controversial. Can you call in big bucks? Meaning, can you use calls to put big bucks in front of you? I hear so many people that say you can't. We're about to show you not one, but two instances where that is absolutely what happens. And the use of rattling horns and a grunt call. And both deer are mature. So there's no, I don't know if this one would have worked or it won't work on my deer. It worked on both these deer. First one that we're going to show you is from a few years ago. I called this deer Splits. And now I'm going to kind of explain why I'm calling when I am, because I'll be quite honest, I'm not a huge fan of blind calling. Don't care for it that much because I'm always afraid that I'm going to make a mistake. The times when blind calling becomes my go-to thing is when I have the wind absolutely perfect. And in both of these hunts, the wind was absolutely perfect. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have attempted it. So the first one, 2017, a deer, like I said, that we call Splits. Don't know that he's there. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. I've seen a couple deer, haven't seen any bucks chasing does. It's early October, or mid-October, I guess I should say, October 20 something. Okay, so we're talking not full rutting activity yet. And so what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna pick up the antlers and I'm gonna hit them together. I'm not going crazy, I'm not simulating this huge, massive fight. But what I am gonna do is do it for a length of time, meaning I'm gonna rattle, then I stop, and then I rattle again. And what that does is simulate two bucks that are pushing each other around. In this particular situation, I'm rattling to a bedding area. I'm hoping that he's not, I didn't think that he would be in there yet, but it turns out he had already beat me there. He was already in place. So what I didn't know when I first picked up the antlers was that I had a deer probably within less than 100 yards as far as I can tell you. Honestly, less than 50 yards as far as I can tell you, because that's when we first saw him. And he just came right to us. Here's the situation. So it's mid-October, pre-rut, mid-morning, temperature was in the 30s, something like that. Wind is blowing out of the southwest, absolutely perfect for where I'm sitting. And I tell the cameraman, we're gonna rattle. But what I always do before I rattle is I hit my grunt call. And I make a few grunts and see if anything responds that way. I start there and then I move into rattling. And so I did that. I made a couple grunts. Then I decided, okay, let's go ahead and rattle. And as I do that, before I can even finish, it's all one continuous clip. If you watch the whole thing, it's one continuous clip from the time I start rattling till the deer shows up. When these deer respond like this, they don't respond out of like just bolting through the door. They don't come running in. They come in really cautious. They come in making scrapes sometimes. They come in posturing. They come in trying to let everyone know that they are they're the king and no one should be messing with them. So I hit these antlers together. Lo and behold, cameraman says, I see a buck making a scrape about 45, 50 yards away. All I can see is his feet moving. And I can tell that it's a buck, but that's it. Then all of a sudden his antlers hit an open hole where I can see, and I'm like, holy cow, it splits. And now again, I don't keep rattling. Once you hit those rattling horns, once I hung him up, that's it. He's already too close, you can't continue. He turns and starts walks straight over. What I didn't know at the time was that my tree stand was set up within 18 yards of a huge community scrape. And he walked straight over to that scrape. He didn't get to work the scrape because I ended up putting an arrow in him before he got to the scrape. But that's deer number one that falls to blind calling. I had no idea that he was there. I had an idea that he lived in that area, but I didn't know that he was exactly there. Okay, so deer number one comes to blind calling, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, October 20 something. It just laid out perfect. You would almost think that that wrote the script for the next hunt, because the next hunt was just a year ago, 2022, a deer that we call Brahma. The only thing is now we've added our own rub tree to the mix. And what's going on is we've set up in an area where I need a northwest wind. We got it, and it's steady right in my face. It's absolutely perfect. What we're not hunting this time is a bedding area. We're hunting a big CRP field across from the alfalfa field that we're on, that these deer use to crisscross through to go to the bedding area. So what do I decide? Got nothing to lose. It's 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning again. Wind's blowing in my favor. It's the right time of the year. That early October is just when this works the best. So if you guys are not packing your antlers and packing your grunt calls from day one, you're missing out on the best opportunity to kill a good buck. Now this one's not a Boone and Crockett deer like the last one was, but this one is another mature deer. Matter of fact, we know this deer is 6 years old. And so as soon as a 6-year-old deer shows up, that's a shooter in our book. But we don't know he's coming yet. We don't know he's there. Tell the cameraman, hey, I'm gonna throw these antlers together. We're gonna see what happens. And I'm explaining to him exactly what I expect to happen. And it's almost verbatim of what happened with splits. If he shows up, if one of these big bucks shows up, they won't come just running in. They'll come in real cautious. Sure enough, we hit the antlers. We hadn't been waiting 3-4 minutes, something like that. Cameraman looks up on the hill and is like, big buck, big buck. Sure enough, I look through the binoculars and not only is it a big buck, it's a buck I know, it's Brahma. And the reason that we call him Brahma is you can see the size of this deer. He looks like a Brahma bull. And he comes walking off the hill. He knows he heard the antlers, but he doesn't know where he heard them from. And so he comes down. Now, the one thing that I noticed about this deer right away was that he started to posture, even though he was several minutes away from me making that first initial call that he hearing those antlers rattling together, he still was responding as though he couldn't find them, but he was gonna let everyone know he was in charge. So as he came down the hill, he starts posturing. He comes walking in, coming a little closer. As you can see, he comes in, gets to 17, 18 yards. And all I got to do is be able to shoot him. Problem is, from my perspective, I got a limb hanging in the way. Cameraman is completely clear. So I got to wait for him to clear that limb. But the thing that we've added, it was our own rub tree at the time. Just to the top left of the screen, if you look, you'll be able to see it. Just for a split second as he almost gets to the rub tree when I finally shoot him. But he was committed to that rub tree because he couldn't find the 2 bucks. He was going to take out his frustrations on that tree. So not only can blind calling work, but blind calling mixed with using scents and rub trees, it's a deadly scenario for these big bucks. And I said big bucks, and I mean old bucks, mature bucks, the ones that everyone say you can't call them in. So if you guys are not trying blind calling, but again, remember the #1 tip on blind calling is the wind. The wind, the wind, the wind. If the wind's marginal, if it's blowing around different areas a little bit, it's gonna mess you up. You don't wanna take that chance. You don't know where they're gonna come from. You've got to have the wind absolutely perfect. And that's the only time that I use blind calling as a way to try to call in a big buck.